Stop what you are doing. Look around you. What if I told you that the biblical countdown to the end times didn't start with a massive global war or some distant comet, but with a quiet, nearly invisible secret papal event that happened right under our noses? Forget the historical interpretations you thought you knew. For centuries, the terrifying apocalypse prophecy of Revelation has haunted humanity, specifically the horrifying arrival of the Four Horsemen: conquest, war, famine, and death. Most of the world treats this as a far-off theoretical threat, but what if the seals have already been broken? What if the timeline we all fear isn't in the future, but in the past? Today we are diving deep into the most guarded secrets of the Holy See to uncover the shocking parallels between specific, documented, and often censored moments involving the papacy and the ancient texts. We're going to examine the evidence suggesting that the moment the Four Horsemen were unleashed wasn't a sudden cataclysm, but a calculated ritualistic move that initiated the true countdown. The details of this ritual and the political fallout that followed are terrifyingly precise. We're talking about a signal that was missed by everyone, except perhaps the highest echelons inside the Vatican walls. Did the true beginning of the end times start decades ago? Before we pull back the curtain on the first seal, tell me this. Have you ever heard whispers about a secret Vatican prophecy that wasn't about Fatima? Drop your deepest theories and what you think the first horseman represents in the comments right now, because what we are about to reveal is going to change how you look at history forever. The book of Revelation is often treated like ancient sci-fi, but when you look closely at the signs described and then compare them to the events unfolding right now, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. We're talking about the breaking of the 7 seals, and the first 4 seals unleash the legendary Four Horsemen. To understand the alarming parallel we see emerging from the heart of the Vatican, we need a quick breakdown of the riders. Imagine the world is a pressure cooker, and these 4 forces are the vents blowing off steam one after the other. First up, the White Horseman. This rider is often called Conquest or sometimes Pestilence. He rides out with a bow and a crown, conquering. Historically, this meant the rapid spread of a conquering empire or a powerful new ideology. But in modern interpretations, think of something invisible, something that sweeps the globe and forces entire nations to kneel. Think global mandates, unprecedented shifts in societal structure driven by a single unseen threat. It wasn't just a war, it was a fundamental change in how humanity interacts, led by an unseen crown. The second seal shatters, and the Red Horseman explodes onto the scene. This one is terrifyingly clear. War. His mission? To take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. He's given a great sword. Now look at the global landscape right now. It's not just localized conflicts. It's a fragmentation of global stability we haven't seen since the Cold War. It's the constant threat of escalation, the feeling that every border is about to ignite. The peace, the fragile global stability built over decades, is actively being dismantled. And the event at the Vatican, that specific world-shaking announcement, happened just as this global instability began to boil over. Coincidence, maybe, but wait until you see the next one. Then comes the Black Horseman. This is the grim reaper of the wallet, famine, but more specifically economic collapse and crippling inflation. The text describes him holding a pair of scales and a chilling pronouncement, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. This isn't just scarcity, it's imbalance. It means the basic necessities become incredibly expensive, a day's wage for a single meal, while the luxuries remain untouched for the elite. Sound familiar? We are living in a time of unprecedented economic disparity, supply chain failures, and inflation that is squeezing the average person dry. The wealth gap isn't just widening, it's becoming a chasm. This trifecta, white, red, black, forms the perfect storm. And this brings us to the fourth and arguably most chilling rider, the Pale Horseman. His name Death, and hell follows with him. This rider is granted power over 1/4 of the earth, specifically to kill with sword, hunger, death, and by the beasts of the earth. The Pale Horse is the confluence. It's not a separate event. It's the inevitable result when the first 3 riders run wild together. When global conflict meets economic collapse meets widespread disease, Death doesn't need to ride alone. He just collects the spoils. Now let's circle back to the Vatican. The specific papal event we are examining, a highly symbolic action that broke centuries of tradition, did not just happen randomly. It occurred at the exact inflection point where the parallels to these four seals began accelerating worldwide. Think of the Vatican event as the sound of the first lock clicking open. It was a signal, a massive symbolic shift that historically always precedes global upheaval. But here is the detail that truly throws historians and theologians into a panic: the secret of the third seal and the Vatican Treasury. The Black Horseman is defined by the scales, symbolizing economic imbalance. What many people don't realize is the immense, unimaginable wealth stored within the Vatican walls, not just historical artifacts, but actual gold reserves and priceless documents detailing global financial movements stretching back centuries. Legend has it that within the deepest restricted levels of the secret archives, the place where even cardinals need special clearance, there exists a forgotten papal decree, or perhaps even a record of a specific financial pact that relates directly to the control of global markets. This isn't about conspiracy. This is about historical leverage. The Vatican has always been a major player in global politics and finance, often operating as an insurer of last resort or a mediator between empires. What if the specific event we are discussing wasn't just a religious ceremony, but the activation of an ancient agreement, a symbolic release that signaled the start of the economic destabilization required for the Black Horseman to ride? Imagine for a moment that the Vatican is not just a spiritual center, but the ultimate historical record keeper of global power structures. When the Pope makes a move that defies tradition, it's not just a religious change, it's a geopolitical earthquake. And there's one more detail that you absolutely will not believe, a little-known fact about the papal regalia itself. When a pope makes a major symbolic break with the past, as happened during the event we are discussing, he often sidesteps or symbolically neglects a specific piece of traditional adornment, the triregnum, or the papal tiara. This three-tiered crown represents the Pope's triple authority: universal pastor, universal jurisdiction, and temporal power. What very few people realize is that the precious stones and specific carvings on the triregnum are historically tied to the concept of the universal shepherd guarding the flock from the apocalypse. When a pope avoids or removes this specific symbol, some ancient texts suggest it signifies a shift in responsibility, a symbolic handing over of that protective duty. It's like the shepherd voluntarily laying down his staff. If you've been stunned by these parallels between ancient prophecy and modern reality, hit that like button right now. It helps us dig deeper into these massive global mysteries. And tell me in the comments, which of the Four Horsemen do you think is riding the hardest right now? Because if the papal event was indeed the signal, we are not just watching history unfold. We are witnessing an ancient, terrifying clock ticking down. And the biggest secret isn't what the Vatican is hiding, but what they just let out of the box. A countdown that doesn't tick in seconds, but in centuries. We are talking about the apocalypse, specifically Revelation chapter 6, where the Lamb breaks the 7 seals and outride the legendary Four Horsemen. Now forget the Hollywood interpretation for a second. These aren't just spooky figures. They are defined forces shaping history. And when you look at certain events emanating from the heart of the Vatican, the parallels stop being coincidences and start looking like a coded warning. Hold that thought. To understand the connection, we first have to break down the riders themselves because the order matters. The first horseman, Conquest, the rider on the white horse. He carries a bow and is given a crown, riding out to conquer. Historically, scholars have linked this not just to military might, but to false peace or religious deception, a conquering of minds, not just lands. Now think about the immense, almost invisible diplomatic power the Holy See holds globally. When a major shift happens in the Vatican structure, especially one that seems to usher in a new era of global outreach or consolidation of spiritual power, some interpreters see this as the saddle being thrown onto that white horse. It's the breaking of the first seal, the initiation phase. The second horseman, War, the rider on the fiery red horse. He takes peace from the earth and people begin to slay one another. This is the simplest one to track. Every major conflict, every eruption of global violence since the prophecy was written has been viewed through this lens. But here is the critical Vatican link. The Church historically acts as a mirror to humanity's worst impulses. When internal schisms or external policy changes seem to fuel global tension, that red glow gets brighter. Imagine the entire world as a pressure cooker, and the Vatican is often seen as the pressure release valve. But what happens when the valve itself starts seizing up? And we haven't even gotten to the scary part yet. The biggest historical alarm bell that scholars point to involves the sheer data the Vatican holds. Think of the Apostolic Archive. It used to be called the Secret Vatican Archives for a reason. It holds over 53 miles of shelving, containing documents dating back 200 years. This isn't just dusty history. This is the unbroken narrative of Western civilization. Every secret treaty, every papal bull, every communication with every major world power. It is a physical, tangible record of the rise and fall of nations, giving the Church a unique vantage point, almost like having the script for the next act. Now let's jump to the third rider, because this one hits us in the wallet and the stomach. The third horseman, Famine, the rider on the black horse. He holds a pair of scales and a voice cries out, "A quart of wheat for a day's wages, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages, but do not harm the oil and the wine." This isn't just starvation. This is economic collapse combined with hyperinflation. The basics become luxury goods. You can afford the expensive things, but you can't afford the daily bread. If you look at recent global economic instability, the massive wealth gaps, and the ongoing food supply crises, it's eerily predictive. And the papal connection. The Church, often speaking on behalf of the poor and oppressed, has issued increasingly dire warnings about global economic disparity. When a pope makes a major, unprecedented move, say addressing a global financial body directly with severe censure, some believe that action signals the acknowledgement that the black horse has already stepped onto the world stage. It's no longer a prophecy, it's a policy reality. But here's the detail that makes conspiracy theorists lose sleep. The Vatican isn't just a spiritual capital, it's a sovereign state and a powerful financial entity. Its historical involvement in banking and international finance means it doesn't just observe the economic seals being broken, it is intimately aware of the levers being pulled. If you're finding these connections as wild as I am, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, which horseman do you think is already riding full speed? Now let's talk about the final and most terrifying rider, the fourth horseman, Death, the rider on the pale horse, and Hades followed him. This rider is granted power over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, famine, plague, and wild beasts. This is the culmination of the previous 3, war, famine, and disease, rolled into one catastrophic global event. The pale horse requires a massive, indiscriminate loss of life. Historically, this has been interpreted as global pandemics, like the Black Death or catastrophic world wars. The specific papal event we are discussing, a moment of deep, unusual internal turmoil or an unexpected break from centuries of tradition, is seen by some fundamentalist groups as the moment the door was opened, setting the stage for death's arrival. Think of it like this. The white horse is the key turning in the lock. The red and black horses are the slow, grinding mechanisms inside the vault, but the pale horse is the vault door finally swinging open. And there is one more detail that you absolutely will not believe, a secret tied to the Vatican that links these prophecies to modern technology. Many believe the real secret of the Vatican isn't just what's in the archives, but the existence of a device called the Chronovisor. This is a legendary alleged machine developed by a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Ernetti in the 1950s that supposedly allows the user to see and hear events from the past. Imagine a television set capable of tuning into history. While the Vatican denies its existence, the law suggests that the Chronovisor was used to witness the crucifixion of Christ and, crucially, to view the future, specifically the apocalyptic events foretold in Revelation. The theory goes that the highest echelons of the Church have not just read the prophecy, they have seen it unfold. They know the exact moment the seals break because they have witnessed the future broadcast. This shifts the entire dynamic. If the Vatican knows the timeline, every major internal decision, every resignation, every controversial statement, every political maneuvering could be interpreted not as mere policy, but as desperate attempts to either delay or prepare for the inevitable arrival of the Four Horsemen. Whether you believe in prophecy or historical interpretation, the fact remains. The stories held within the walls of the Vatican seem to parallel humanity's darkest fears, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the countdown isn't just beginning, it's been running this whole time. And if you want to dive deeper into the mysteries the Church would rather keep hidden, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We uncover the secrets others won't touch. This isn't about theological debate. This is about patterns. about history echoing ancient warnings so precisely it sends a shiver down your spine. When we look at the specific history of the papacy, not just the faith but the geopolitical power, the parallels to the Four Horsemen become shockingly clear, almost as if the Vatican itself is acting as the stage for this countdown. The prophecy starts with the first seal being broken, unleashing the white horseman, Conquest. He rides with a bow and is given a crown, going forth conquering and to conquer. Now think about the Vatican's power. It doesn't need tanks. Its conquest is one of influence, doctrine, and global adherence, the defining historical moment where the Church solidified its status not just as a religious body, but as an unquestioned temporal power, was arguably the moment of papal infallibility being formally defined, or perhaps its modern diplomatic expansion. This isn't conquest by brute force, it's conquest through universal, non-negotiable spiritual authority. It's a crown granted by doctrine, covering the world in a vast, interconnected network of belief. This horseman is subtle, yet absolute. But the real trouble starts with the second seal. The red horseman bursts onto the scene, given a great sword to take peace from the earth, causing people to slay one another. This is where historical conflict involving the global Catholic body comes into focus. Look at the 20th century. 2 world wars, the Cold War dividing the globe, civil conflicts fueled by religious and political divides right across Europe and Latin America. Historians calculate that the 20th century saw more human death due to conflict than all previous centuries combined. The Vatican, while often a mediator, sat at the epicenter of these massive global slaughters, a constant witness to the peace being ripped away. The sword isn't just wielded by one nation, it's a global, bloody mandate, and the sheer scale of modern warfare makes this red horseman terrifyingly efficient. If you're starting to see how these ancient predictions map onto our modern geopolitical structure, hit that like button right now and comment below. Which of these seals do you think is the most alarming? Now hold tight, because the economic instability of the third seal is perhaps the most relevant to your bank account right now. This is the black horseman. He carries a pair of scales and a voice cries out, "A quart of wheat for a day's wages, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages, but do not harm the oil and the wine." This isn't famine because there's no food. This is famine caused by hyperinflation and economic injustice. A day's labor for a single meal. This is the prophecy of radical systemic wealth inequality, a global economy where the basic necessities are priced out of reach for the common person, while the luxuries remain untouched by the crisis. Think about the global financial crises of the last 2 decades, the massive disparity between the ultra-rich and the rest of the world. Even today, as we speak, global supply chains are breaking, and basic commodity prices are soaring while wealth concentrates at the very top. The Vatican, itself a wealthy sovereign state, operates within this global economic framework, dealing in gold, art, and massive financial transactions. The Black Horseman represents the corruption of the market, and modern global finance is the perfect host for this prophecy. But the grand finale, the horseman that truly signifies the end of the line, is the 4th seal. The Pale Horseman. His name is Death, and Hades follows close behind him. He is given authority over a quarter of the earth to kill with the sword, with famine, with pestilence, and by the wild beasts of the earth. This isn't a localized event. This is mass mortality on a global scale, a quarter of humanity wiped out. And the tools: sword, famine, and pestilence. We have just lived through a global pandemic, a modern plague that swept the globe, halting entire nations. We are also facing environmental collapse that promises future mass migrations, resource wars, and emerging diseases as we encroach further into wild habitats, the wild beasts component of the prophecy. And here is the terrifying plot twist, the bonus fact that changes everything. The Vatican archives contain documents, letters, and artifacts that touch upon nearly 2 millennia of global history and prophetic interpretation. But what nobody talks about is the specific, intense focus the early church fathers placed on the sequencing of the seals. They believed the seals weren't just abstract events, but historical milestones that once met could not be undone. The truly chilling connection is this. If you accept the White Horseman as the establishment of supreme, unchallenged spiritual authority, the Red Horseman as the era of global mechanized warfare, and the Black Horseman as the age of global systemic hyperinflation and inequality, then the rise of global pestilence and the threat of environmental collapse, the final tools of the Pale Horseman, may not be a warning anymore. They might be the final confirmation. We are watching a prophecy unfold, not in the distant future, but in the news cycle, minute by minute. Whether you believe in prophecy or not, the fact that these ancient warnings map so perfectly onto our modern crises, conquest through information, war on a global scale, economic ruin, and pandemic, is too alarming to ignore. The question is, if the first three seals have already been broken by the flow of history, are we now living in the shadow of the fourth? If you want to keep exploring the secrets hidden in plain sight, make sure you subscribe right now. Don't just watch history happen, understand it. Tell me in the comments, do you think the Vatican holds secrets about the future, or just secrets about the past? Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.